Welcome to Start Before You're Ready, the podcast that proves that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to begin your journey towards better health and happiness. I'm your host, Kelly Young. Remember, the first step is often the hardest, but it's always worth taking. Hey guys, it's Kelly, and I am back with episode number 90 of the Start Before You're Ready podcast. It is incredible to believe that we are on episode 90, and I just want to take a moment to say thank you, because without people listening and sharing and telling me that the podcast is providing them value, probably wouldn't still be doing it. So it's really important to me that I know that this is helpful for you and that you're enjoying it. So if that is the case, please let me know. Please make sure that you're following the podcast, very important. And if you haven't had an opportunity to leave a review either on Spotify or Apple, I would greatly appreciate it. Anytime you hear a podcast that speaks to you or that you think would be of interest to somebody else, the absolute best thing you can do is share it directly to them. Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different, and it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about and very interested in, and that is the fitness industry. I have been a student of the fitness industry for basically my entire adult life, and I've learned so much about how it's changed and how a lot of things have stayed the same, and I want to kind of tell that story. I actually think it's really interesting. The fitness industry today is booming, right? We look at the fitness industry as a huge money-making industry. And right now we're seeing a lot on lifestyle. It's built more on not just physical health, but mental health. We're seeing a lot with wearables, AI, hybrid memberships. But the real heartbeat, in my opinion, and I'm gonna stay on this till the day I die, the real heartbeat is community. That's where people feel seen, supported, inspired, and they show up consistently. And I really want to talk about my entry into this industry and the different chapters that I've had in working as a fitness professional. So in the 80s, we're going to go back to the 80s. And in the 80s, I was a 3-sport athlete. So fitness was a big part of my life. And to be totally honest, I love sport, I love teams, I love competing, but I think I liked the idea of getting better together more than anything. That to me was like the magic of a team. It was like we were all working towards this collective goal of getting better together. And being on a sports team was, and still to this day, is my happy place. So as a 3-sport athlete, I stayed very busy. I didn't have a lot of off-season time, but somehow, I don't know how or when, maybe it was in the summer, I joined a health club called Bally's Health Club. It was in Niskayuna. It was right near my high school. I'm pretty sure I'm still a member, even though it doesn't exist, because it was a lifetime membership. It was a super low price model. They got you into this little room and you signed your life away. I know I didn't have a credit card at that time, so I'm not sure. It must have been a one-time fee at that time. But anyway, I don't really remember working out there that much, but I must have like gotten on the elliptical or done something over one of the summers. And that was my first taste of fitness, just as fitness. I'd love to hear from you guys if you were also part of that. Health club chain grew out of Jack LaLanne. We've talked about Jack LaLanne on this podcast. It grew out of his European health spa. So in high school, I also asked for a Reebok step bench. It was probably like the only time I ever wanted something really specific. And I don't know, I can't tell you how I saw this Reebok step bench or how I knew to even ask for it, but I wanted a Reebok step bench. And one of the reasons why I was intrigued by the Reebok step bench is because the instructor that was teaching it and the other people that were part of this production were really athletic looking women. They had big legs and it just seemed very athletic, and it seemed like something that I could relate to. And I was never a dancer. I was never able to like join in any of those. Well, I did dance, like my high school friends would do like a dance routine and I would find a spot on it, but it was torture for them and me. It just wasn't my thing. But for some reason, the step bench felt like a good marrying of athleticism and moving to music, and I just really liked it. So I had got my step bench for Christmas, and I would just practice on it. I don't even know what I would practice. I also had the tape, the Jen Miller tape, where it was like 3 basics to the right, 2 jumping jacks over the top, back over. I could tell you it because I memorized it. I went to college for communications. I was interested in being a communications major. And one of the things that I noticed right away as a college student, as a freshman in college, was I really missed being on a team. So I found myself every day, right around the same time that my sports team practices were, exercising, either running or doing something. And that just became part of my routine. It definitely, like, exercise grounded me. I needed to do something physical in order to feel functional. And then my friend Daryl Loescher from Rye, New York, wanted me to join this health club called City Health Club. It was kind of in between Ithaca and Cornell, those that know that area. And it was, I think, a mom and pop. I could be wrong, but I think it was a mom and pop. And they had a student special, $99 for the semester. Back then, $99 was still a good deal, but getting $99 would have been a big deal. But we joined. And I quickly found my way to the group fitness studio, and I really enjoyed taking classes. That's what kind of became my new happy place, was the group exercise studio at the City Health Club. Well, back then there was an organization called URSA, and it might still exist, but basically if you belonged to a club, you could go to affiliate club in a different city. Like if you were traveling, it was a perk. And it turned out that even though I was a summer membership, I'm not sure how I pulled this off, but when I went back home to Niskayuna, I found an affiliate club called the Colony Athletic Club. Pretty sure that's what it was. And I started doing group fitness classes there. And I would go in the morning. I worked at a restaurant called Garcia's, and I think my shift started at like 11 or 12. So I would go in the morning, and it was a very small class. The club was not really like a group training studio. So it was like only a couple people in the class, maybe 5. And the instructor, I would always stand up front and kind of brown nose the instructor. She was going on vacation, and she was like, would you be willing to sub my class for me? And I don't know why she thought I would be qualified to sub her class for her. But of course I said yes. And I remember practicing my routine. Back then it was a little bit more of like a routine, and showing up to sub her class. I don't even think I was going to get paid. I don't think I was on the payroll. I think this was all off the cuff. She just asked me as a favor, and I said yes, and nobody came. I think it was twice. I was scheduled to teach 2 classes. Literally not one person came. So I still use that as my first experience, even though nobody came. Well, fast forward a little bit. There was a new gym. Gym is a stretch, because it was kind of like one of those gyms where everyone wore like the bright colored pants. I forgot what they were called, but one of those like kind of meatheady, boxy kind of type places on Union Street, on the 2nd floor of Union Street. That's my hometown of Niskayuna. And I was like, oh my gosh, a gym's opening right on Union Street. I wonder if I could teach there. Again, I don't know where I thought I could teach. I wasn't certified. I'd never really taught a class before. I just liked it and liked to do it myself. So I went in to the front desk and was like, hey, are you looking for, I'm a group exercise instructor. I don't know what I said. Are you looking for fitness instructors? And they're like, we don't have a group exercise room, but if you want to walk around and talk to people on the equipment and pull them off equipment and do a class with them, you can charge them $1 and keep it. I wish I was making this up. So this is going back. This is in the early 90s. This is in the early 90s. This is when I was in college. So I did. And it's funny, we have a mutual friend. My friend Tanya, Akak's sister, says she was one of my students, and she loved my class, which I can't even imagine what this class was. So that was my first taste of like, okay, I really like group fitness. And not that I thought I was going to have a job with it, but it was just something that I knew that I liked and that I gravitated towards. I brought my step bench to college, and I would do my own little routines. My college friends would want to go out at night, and I would say, no, I'm not going out. I don't know why they wanted me to go. I guess I was fun. I would say, I'm not going out unless you do this, let me practice with you. And they would go up to my room, and we'd do like a little routine. And that's where I was in the 90s. I kind of realized my sophomore year of college that I wasn't necessarily interested in in what I thought I was studying. I'd worked for a radio station. I had great internships. I'd worked for a radio station. Everyone at my radio station like ate donuts, smoked coffee, and drank cigarettes. Smoked cigarettes and drank coffee. And I just was like, I don't like this vibe here. Like I like the people, they were nice, but I was starting to be like, this doesn't feel like me. And I've shared this story before, but I was part of, or got to be part of my cousin's diagnoses with leukemia, and I saw him fight for his life, and I just had this like new passion and new calling for helping people with their health, helping people with their fitness. I went on, got my degree, but quickly realized that I really wanted to do something in the preventative health space, was what I thought. I didn't know what. I didn't even know. I should have talked to a counselor. I should have talked to somebody, but I didn't. I did things the Kelly way, and I just started looking for graduate school programs that I could get into that would get me a degree that would make me credentialed to help people with their health. And I moved to North Carolina. And when I moved to North Carolina, I actually got a job at a hospital. And this is interesting because in that era, okay, so this was 94, this was 1994, there was a new, wellness was becoming a big buzzword, and companies were catching on to it. So this hospital-based fitness center had two purposes. One, it was a place for the doctors and the nurses and all the hospital employees, janitor, didn't matter what, to exercise, for them to get their fitness in between shifts. You can imagine people that work that kind of work, they're exhausted. It's hard to get them to exercise, but I did have people. And also we did diabetes education. So it also served as a fitness center for the diabetes patients that were part of the program. They had to do education, and that this was part of the program. So I was doing education and I was doing fitness. And at that point I was like, okay, that's when certifications became I think you had to be certified. So I was studying for my certification, but you had to go and it wasn't like now where you get the requirements and then you study online and you go take your test. You had to go for a weekend, you had to do an audition, you had to be in front of all these judges, and it was just a little bit different back then. And then you had to take a written test as well. And mine was in Raleigh. I think it was the first time I ever stayed in a hotel by myself. I drove to Raleigh from Winston, which isn't a big deal, and stayed for the weekend and took the test. And then I started teaching more. Then I started group fitness. At that point, you saw a lot of high-low, which was like kind of an aerobic dance-based. There was weights, but it was like 3s and 5s. 5s were heavy. You would never in a weight room see a 20. You wouldn't see that. It wasn't like that. I think like 5s, 8s were probably the heaviest, and they probably only had a few sets. And fitness was also, that's when certifications were coming. Every piece of equipment would have a certification, if that makes sense. Like if you wanted to teach, well, if you were a trainer, I know, when I went for the Y, I went through a Nautilus certification. I went through a BOSU certification. Later, I was on through a TRX certification, a STEP certification. You had certifications beyond your certification. Education was huge, and which was great. I think it's still huge. It's just, we just see it in different ways now. So I got a job my first teaching job at the Winston-Salem YMCA in North Carolina. This was people that belonged there had high expectations. Let's just say that. They had very high expectations. The caliber instructors were excellent. And, I was in my 22, 23, and they kind of ate me alive. I don't think they loved me, but I didn't care. I didn't teach my classes, and I'd send my roommate into the locker room afterwards. I'm like, what'd they say? Did they hate it? I was definitely not 100% confident. And she's like, they like you. They just say you're really bouncy. And, I was young and I had a lot of energy, or you have too much energy. That was another thing. Like a lot of energy. And I didn't quite know how to use it in a good way. I think I was just back then it was the idea was you want to make them tired, and you want to be the hard instructor, and it was just different. There was less, it was less of an experience for your member and more like your instructor had to prove something. I mean, at least how it felt, that's how it felt in my perspective. So then I continued doing classes at Forsyth Memorial Hospital, and I ended up going to graduate school. So I had to take all the undergraduate courses. So the part-time job at the Y and the job at Forsyth Memorial Hospital. I also had a job at a restaurant. Those were 3 things I needed to do to pay for all of my undergraduate coursework. I had to take more courses to get into the graduate program. So I was basically getting another degree, which was fine. And I had done some exercise science and exercise related classes in undergraduate school because I just liked it. So anytime I had like an extra credit or opportunity, that's what I would take. But I needed very specific requirements to get into graduate school. So a lot was going on, but I was learning a lot, and the industry was really kind of evolving. You were seeing like the big box gyms were really big, and you were also seeing trends that were a little bit more like things like body pump and things like, maybe body pump wasn't quite out yet, but that's kind of what was going on in the 90s. And then when I got into graduate school, I moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, and I reached out to the Y there. There's a cute little YMCA in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's still there. And I wanted to be a fitness instructor there. And that was a much older demographic, I think, than the Winston-Salem one. And I was very young there. I was definitely I was the Nicole Foley of KBC. I was just younger than the other instructors, but I liked it. The other instructors were great to me. And they ended up making me the aerobics coordinator, which meant that I had to schedule all their classes, do payroll, do things that I really had no business doing at the time. I'm not sure how I figured out how to do it, but I had a great boss. And the other thing that the YMCA taught me was community. Community was huge at the YMCA. They did a lot of philanthropic work. They did events like the Aerobathon. The Aerobathon was a huge fundraiser that they did. That was part of my job, was to run this aerobathon. I remember setting up for it and having to write all the thank yous, and there was over hundreds of people, and we raised a very significant amount of money. And it was definitely at the time, I didn't think it was setting me up for anything I would want to do in the future, but it was definitely like planting seeds and definitely shaping what I knew fitness could do. Like, I saw community at the YMCA. And I saw also a lot of education. We were required to do a lot of ongoing training. Wayne Westcott was big back then. I think he actually came to the Y, which was a huge deal. If you're a fitness person, you probably know that name. But I was not by any means, I wasn't thinking fitness was my career anyway. I thought I wanted to go more of the nutrition route. I thought I wanted to be a registered dietitian. And I was just teaching classes because I loved it. But you know how that goes. So I continued to teach there until I moved from North Carolina after I graduated. So my graduate program ended up shifting gears. We ended up at, so I think it was 1997 that I graduated, and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro had a newly accredited Masters of Public Health program. And there's a whole story about me not doing well on a test, but part of it was that I had a graduate assistantship while I was at University of North Carolina at Greensboro at BB&T. So BB&T had an employee health promotion program. This was something that was on the rise in the 90s. Companies were investing in their employees' health. There were a lot of studies being done that were saying, if your employees are healthy, they will be sick less often, they will be more productive, your company will thrive if you have healthy employees. It was a great time for health. And it's really where I thought I wanted to take my career, because that to me sounded like, oh wait, this could be a job. I can work for big companies like BB&T, and I can go in and I can run their employee health promotion program. So that sounded like actually marrying a lot of the different things that I liked. So my assistantship required me to work there, but one of my professors that was, I forgot what they call them, like the chair or whatever of my thesis, was really interested in the data that they were collecting. So at BB&T, they partnered with a company that did basically physicals, where if you worked for BB&T, you could do this quarterly physical program where if you got certain markers, if your health came back with certain standards, you were paid extra money. This is kind of crazy. This was all happening in the 90s. And they got a bonus in their paycheck, but it had to be very formalized and it had to be very numbers driven. And they had to meet certain criteria. And that was my job, was to make sure that these people were meeting their criteria. And they, in turn, were also going to give me the data to use in my thesis. So my thesis was going to be really cool. And my professor was really excited about it. And kind of, I don't know what changed in the healthcare system, but somewhere in the project, they decided, no, you can't have the data, Kelly. And that caused a little bit of turmoil as far as where the direction of my thesis was, but I ended up still being able to do something very similar, just without the data. Actually, I think Andrew helped me with this, because I remember I'm not the numbers person, he's the number person, and I had to find a way to make it quantitative, and I don't know. I don't even know what I did. I have to find that thesis somewhere. But I know I worked really hard on it, and I know that I was working not only as a student, I was working as the coordinator of the YMCA and for BB&T, and I also had a restaurant job. That's, if you guys hear me talk about Lucky 32, which was a farm-to-table restaurant in Greensboro. It's actually no longer there. There is one in Raleigh. The Winston one is no longer there. The Greensboro one might be there. But all in all, I learned a lot from working at the restaurant. I learned a lot from working at Y. I learned a lot from working at BB&T. I was probably one of the very first people to graduate with a master's in public health from University of North Carolina at Greensboro, because I was at the time very ambitious. I still am ambitious, but I was kind of done with school, right? It's 97. I've been in school since I've been in college since 94. I wanted to move on. I wanted a real job. I wanted one job. I didn't want to drive between Winston. I was doing a lot of different things. So I was ready, and I was excited to work in worksite health promotion. That was really like my calling. That's what I did my thesis on. I had experience it from the hospital, and it was very up and coming. Like, I thought, like, I'm onto something. This is going to be a big thing, and it was, until it wasn't. We can talk about the economy. We can talk about so many different things, but I'm going to stick with fitness. So I wanted to move to Richmond because Andrew had gotten his first job from Wake. He had gotten a job at Capital One. So Richmond was my first choice by far, but my next choice was as close as I could get to Richmond. And still, at that point, I really wanted to do something that I felt like was what I went to school for and what I was passionate about. So DC was kind of the next closest area where it was a big enough market where they were doing worksite health promotion. And there were several companies, and I guess you would call them like management companies, that hired people to go into corporations or organizations to do worksite health promotion. And I got a job with a company called Mid-Atlantic Corporate Health, and I was going to be working for the Department of Defense, which sounded really awesome and fun and cool. And I was excited about this job with the DoD. So they introduced me to my manager, and it's Keith, who was my manager at Forsyth Hospital in North Carolina. So that was just a random, very, very, very random coincidence. We're going from Winston-Salem, North Carolina to the Maryland. I lived in Laurel, but it was like up by Baltimore, kind of by the airport is where the Department of Defense is. And he was my manager there. So that was great because he knew me, he trusted me, he gave me my own program. I was going to be the FANICS manager, which was really a great job because I had so much autonomy. There wasn't like, okay, Kelly, these are the programs you're running. These are the classes you're doing. No, they said, here's your facility. You're the manager. So I had to hire people. I actually hired a lot of people from Salisbury because they had a big exercise science program there, and it was right in kind of that area. So I became the program manager, and I did everything. I mean, it was not like any kind of glorious job. I did taught classes, I ran programs. I mostly helped people when they had to do their tests. So both civilians and non-civilians had to take some kind of physical fitness test. And they would come to me like weeks before and be like, you need to help me pass my test. I'm like, we need a little more time for this. But it was, it was an interesting time in the fitness industry. I feel like there was a marry of like group fitness, cycling was becoming really big, and you were seeing things in the gym that kind of married like gym workouts with group fitness workouts. At least that's what I was doing. Because I had this big gym with all the equipment and I had lots of different weights, and I was able to do some like unique programming. And I really liked that. That was kind of my passion, was programming and creating fitness workouts that I felt were appropriate for the population that I was serving. At that point, like probably like just middle-aged adults, but they also cared about their fitness because they had to pass this fitness test. So that was my time. That was my first time living by myself. I moved to Maryland. I lived like on the border. I live in Savage Mill, right on the border of Laurel and Columbia. I guess Laurel's not like a nice place to live. So I think I've learned to say I lived between Laurel and Columbia. But I was, a little in over my head with expenses, like all young people are when they graduate from school. And I got another job teaching group fitness. Back then, racket clubs were big. So it was at a racket club. I would do that early in the morning on the days that I didn't have to work early. Then this was my first failed attempt at being an entrepreneur. I lived in this really like cute little apartment complex, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's a cute little gym there. There must be so many people here that want to work out and would love a program and don't have one. So I walked around with a little flyer to all the different apartments and tried to get people to do my workout program that was going to be 2 nights a week. And I still have the flyer. Bolingbrook was the name of the community, and nobody joined. So that did not work out, but that was me knowing that, hey, these people are busy, young professionals that are going to want something to do. They're going to want workouts. Maybe they can't afford to go to a gym, or maybe they don't have the time to go to the gym. Thought I'll bring it to their apartment complex. What a genius. Not so much. So that was where I really started to lean in to probably more of the fitness side, realizing that like I love every aspect of helping people with their health, but I think my calling is really more on the fitness end of it. Well, Mid-Atlantic Corporate Health had a contract with Inova. They wanted me to move to Northern Virginia, and which was closer to Richmond, which should have felt like, okay, that's a good thing. They wanted me to move to Northern Virginia for this contract with the hospital systems that they had. And it was basically running wellness, community wellness through the hospitals, everywhere from Mount Vernon, Alexandria, Fair Oaks. I would be doing prenatal, I would be doing programs, managing that. And I politely said, no, I don't want to move to Northern Virginia. I eventually want to move to Richmond. I love my job here. I don't think I'm going to be here that much longer, so it doesn't seem fair to take a job. And they said, they made it worth my while. I know that. And they said if I could do it, if I would be willing to do it for 6 months, they'd still wanted me to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not moving to Richmond until I get married. And 6 months, I'm not getting married in 6 months because I'm not even engaged. So I moved to Northern Virginia. I actually lived with my Aunt Maureen and Uncle Jim and cousins Jamie and Jenna because I didn't know how long I would be there. And they lived actually right down the street from where we live now. They live right across the street from Greenbrier. So my job there was really my first experience managing a lot of things, managing people, managing a lot of things, managing yoga instructors, and facilities, getting locks, getting paycheck. It was probably not a great fit for me. I wasn't really doing anything fitness related, but I got to experience the community side of wellness. So that was good. And this was when things like Tai Chi, mind body were coming into play. You were seeing a lot of interest in more than just like the hardcore aerobics or just cycling or just, it was people wanted more. And that is when I got engaged. So I actually went away with Andrew. This was in 1999, and we got engaged. So now we're moving on to my next job, which is really where I learned the most. But I didn't want this job. So when I found out that we were engaged, I was like, okay, I need to find a job in Richmond. And I started I was a hustler, okay? So if I wanted something, I was gonna find a way to make it happen. I would find a way to make it happen. If I had to build it, I would do it. I didn't care. But I could not for the life of me find a job, like a career that would pay me a salary in Richmond, Virginia, because the market was really small. It didn't exist. Yes, there were gyms. I could have gone and been a trainer. I could have gone and been a group fitness instructor, but there was nobody that was going to pay me a salary to do programs. There was no worksite health promotion at the time. I remember bugging Andrew and being like, can Capital One do something? Like, do you think they would hire me? But I didn't have the experience really yet to be out on my own. So I ended up taking a job, American Family Fitness Center. And this is kind of a very pivotal time in my career in many ways, because I really thought that I was taking a step back. That, okay, now I'm going to work in this gym wearing crinkle pants and a polo shirt, and I'm working with a wide variety of people. I loved everybody I worked with, but they certainly weren't people that considered themselves like this was their professional career. And I felt like I don't really want to go work in this gym, in this little cubby office. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And I hope that, anybody listening to this that's on a path and it doesn't know exactly that maybe this next step isn't there, the one that they think is the right step, and this took me off path a little bit. But as I look at what I do now, it really is significant and probably the most pivotal educational portion of my journey in becoming an entrepreneur and becoming an owner, becoming somebody that is still lit up by the fitness industry. So my job was to sell health club memberships at American Family Fitness. Now, let me tell you the good part about it. Good part about it is I love the people I work with, and we had a lot of fun, and I loved talking to people. So if someone would come in, all different ages, we probably had a pretty young demographic back then, but all different ages, all different socioeconomic people where a lot of them couldn't really afford, they wanted to belong to this gym, but they didn't have the criteria of whatever we required to belong to the gym. So there was a lot of workarounds. But I got to talk to them about their fitness goals, basically. Like, why do you want to join a gym? What's important to you? And I really liked that part. And then if they became members, I got to see them all the time. So I was really far more into like their journey, their fitness journey, than I was to selling their membership, which after being there for some time really served me well, because everybody liked me, they knew me, they trusted me, they knew that I cared about their fitness, not just selling them a membership. I was also a group separately. I was a group fitness instructor, so I could encourage them in the fitness studio. I also knew all the group fitness instructors because those were my people, those were my girls. I had a little crew, a team, fitness instructors, and we were all, and guys too. My gosh, one of my good friends is still in Richmond doing fitness. But so I took this job and was able to learn a lot about the business of fitness. And this was a corporate job. American Family was run like a top-notch corporation. I continually would give shout outs to the owner. Back then, this industry was booming. We were selling a lot of memberships every single day. Now, meanwhile, a lot of those people never came into the studio, but we were selling 3-year contracts for family memberships, single, couple, family. You would sell 10, 20 deals in a week, and we had like 5 salespeople. So that tells you how big this gym was and how much business that they were doing. And they treated us very well. They paid us really well. That was my first experience with sales, realizing, oh my gosh, you can make a lot of money selling fitness, selling memberships to a health club. And I really liked the way American Family treated their members. I felt like they actually, yes, a lot of the members never came, but if you did come, if you were one of the people that were utilizing your membership, they had an excellent childcare center, they had a cafe, we had an impeccable cleaning staff, the place was cleaned throughout, like, it was a really large organization. Like, I think we had close to 100 people working there between the different fitness instructors and the different childcare workers and the different programs that they did for youth. I felt like I was part of something special. So eventually I was asked to be a manager there, to be the assistant general manager, and I took it because the hours were a little more set, and that's when I was having children, and it just made sense, and it was a perfect fit for me because I did know a lot about fitness, and I was going to be managing the fitness department and also the cafe, which, anyone knows me knows I love food. So I got to be part of the cafe. We got to plan our own menus. We got to do a lot of different things. There's a lot of autonomy. I think the thing for me in all of my roles that I had was that there was never a job that was like, these are the things you do and this is how you do it. It's like, this is what needs to get done, figure out how to do it. And I liked that. That was a much better scenario for me than some place that was going to micromanage me and tell me how things needed to be done. This was actually, American Family was the first place. So when I became the assistant general manager, I had this vision of the employees being more united. I wanted the housekeeping staff to know the personal training staff, to know the childcare staff. At that time, I had gotten to know the childcare staff because I was checking Dalton into the childcare and eventually Brandon. My kids actually stayed there on site with me. That was another huge perk. I mean, gosh, now the idea of that perk is just incredible. And the people that worked in the childcare center were incredible. Shout out to Shirley, Miss Nikki. All of them were just really just so good with the kids. They taught me so much about being a mom and learning just about, oh my gosh, they taught me everything. They would give me a hard time if I was doing something wrong. I don't know, something with Dalton can't wear that, or you can't let him do that. I'm like, oh, I can't? Okay, well, what should I do? But I did feed my kids really well, and they would always make fun of me. They're like, what is Dalton? And they'd eat his food. They would be like what it took, because I would bring yummy, healthy food. There was no baby food. It was and they would joke. They're like, well, we had a little bit of the sweet potato, or we had a little. I'm like, oh, it's okay. Anyway, so I want to tell you about this challenge that I started there because I actually think it was brilliant, and maybe this could be done somewhere else. But it was the personal trainers, the trainers that worked in American Family were paired with somebody from a different department. So if Miss Shirley from the nursery wanted to get in shape, she was going to work with Ed, who was the fitness director. This is actually real names. And if Carol from housekeeping wanted to get in shape, she was going to work with another trainer named Jody. So it was like everyone, so they were paired together and they were a team. And I got Brian, the owner of the company, in on this. And I was like, Brian, will you willing, I want to host a party. I want to do this red carpet event. I want to give them a prize, a monetary prize. And I think Brian provided the prize. And what he really provided, which was huge, which was another testament to him as a generous businessman, is he let the trainers, as long as they didn't have other clients, he let them train the employees. So it was a great thing. Our personal training went through the roof because you had housekeeping talking about how great the personal trainers were. You had the nursery staff talking about how great the personal trainers were, and the front desk staff. So it was it really was a brilliant, I'm not trying to brag, but it really was a brilliant program. And it gave me a lot of confidence, thinking to myself, this is what I'm actually really good at. I'm actually really good at creating programs that work and following through. I forgot how long it was, 6 weeks maybe. It might have been a little bit longer, but I don't think anyone expected it to turn out as well as it did. And it wasn't part of my job. I had a big job at that point. My job was making sure that people were showing up for their shifts, making sure that the front desk was running properly, making sure that the sales team, I had some responsibilities with the sales team who were my buddies. So that was tricky too. But what I really want to share about this is I found a way to put my own name on a position that wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to manage people. I wanted to help people with their fitness programs. So this is part one of a 2-part series, and I'm going to go on and tell you about the kind of the next chapters in the next episode. And I'd love to hear your feedback as far as the fitness aspect of it. So like what we were seeing in the fitness industry, we were seeing fitness become, in my opinion, much more inclusive. So we had people in that group fitness studio that weren't necessarily athletes or fitness people. These were people that were just intrigued by the model of group training. And I think that becoming inclusive was a huge part of this era of finding classes, finding formats that everybody would feel comfortable in. It didn't have to be like super athletic or super intense. We were seeing a lot of different formats on our schedule, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Start Before You're Ready. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might need a little motivation. Ready to start your own journey? Check out our workouts and nutrition coaching programs at kellysbootcamp.net. You can choose from in-person sessions or virtual programs. Set up a complimentary coaching session to get started. Follow along with me and the show on social media at Kellys_bootcamp. Until next time, this is Kelly Young reminding you that the best time to start is always now.